So I have back with us Kristine Webber, owner of Subtle Yoga and the creator of, just go on over there, subtleyoga.com, and see how she has created herself as a bridge, not only to, you know, her yoga work, but bringing that into helping healthcare providers, you know, behavioral health. She just puts it right out there. And I'm going to say right now, who gave her the permission? She gave herself the permission. Because, you know, it's not like you're going to see the 56 letters after her name to give her the permission, or that people, you know, she's had to let people understand what it is she has to give healthcare providers support, to give, you know, yoga professionals support, to give clients peer-to-peer, just off the street support. So I welcome you again, Kristine, and we're going to be talking about kind of aligning with that purpose, you know, not just how our body works or our physiology works or our mind works or, you know, the mechanics of what we learn in our business, but you had said something in module 2 about being mission driven. And I think a lot of women are mission driven. I think we're kind of, you know, we do have the programming a little bit, but we have sort of a role to demonstrate how we might take that journey as a woman, maybe not as trying to be a man. So what have you learned along the way in your business? You said you're about 14 years or so in. What have you learned about that path, that heroine union into one thing that looks like life amongst, you know, I will say Kristine has a son, you know, he's, how old is your son right now?
He's 13.
Yeah, so he's 13-year-old son. We all know, right? We're going into teens, and you know she's been working this out for, you know, basically his life. So he's grown up amongst it.
One of my ideas is that babies bring blessings. They make you get your shit together. You know, they make you figure out what your priorities are. You know, and that was definitely my experience with my son when he was born. I was like, oh. Now I better, it's the feet to the fire, you know, sink or swim. And as I started my business, which was right when I was pregnant, really, I started my business, and, you know, and dealt with the pitfalls and the failures and the challenges and all that stuff. You know, my husband would always say, I would be like, oh, I'm really depressed. I only had one person in my class today or whatever. And my husband would say, well, there's always jobs at the dollar store.
Right.
Like that was his joke. To get me to, you know, to light the fire under me a little bit and be like, you know, you do it. And I think having children is a way that you really figure out what your life is about. It's such a beautiful gift, you know, because it's not easy. And I started late. I was 38 when I had my son. You know, and I thought, well, after that experience, I probably don't want to put my body through that again. It just wasn't something I couldn't deal with the sleep deprivation and stuff at that time. My body wasn't, you know, and so I had one kid, and I'm sort of like, you get what you get. And I feel so grateful for it, despite the fact that people are like, oh yeah, one kid's kind of imbalanced family or whatever. People have those ideas, and I don't know.
And they feel the need to let you know, just in case you didn't realize how wrong you were, right? And that's, you know, and that's part of it, you know, setting up to, this is my life. The self-ownership, you know, getting to the point that this is how I've chosen to get this big picture done. I mean, you, like you said in the last video, you're changing people's lives every day. Like, I feel I'm a transformational catalyst as well. This is not work that has an indefinite amount of boundaries on your own. Like you said, self-care from last time. You know, this is why those first 2 modules, getting that straight, are so important, because then you don't take action. And I think I see that. I see that a hell of a lot in the yoga therapy world. I definitely see that in physical therapy world, in the state of
Well, you get
First
stuck.
couple of years, you get out of school. I think, I think people with like these medical credentials, they kind of come out feeling pretty confident and having some conviction. But then I see women, either they didn't have kids and then they suddenly have kids, or they're not going to have kids. They've chosen not to, but they're hitting those obstacles where people are like, it's getting kind of old. You sure? Like like, what are you doing?
Waiting. I heard
Yeah,
that
like,
a lot.
right. Or if they haven't found quite the right partner to be on that journey with them, the journey they want to have.
Well, let's talk about that journey a little bit, because I think that's really what I can offer to this conversation is what that journey is about in sort of a mythic archetypal way. That's one of the things that I work with a lot with people in terms of mental health, psychology, but also in terms of the subtle body and the yoga philosophy system and how that story is embodied. So
Beautiful.
So Carl Jung studied and spoke about the subtle body system that came from the Indians. And that's not widely known. And the reason is because he did his lectures in German, and they were not translated and widely available in English until 1995. So everything that was written about the subtle body before then was coming basically from, without that wisdom of his archetypal insight, And then Joseph Campbell was one of Carl Jung's students, and he kind of picked up on this idea of the journey and these archetypal mythic symbols that we hit along the way. And he's the one who crafted this idea of the hero's journey. So, the hero's journey doesn't just have to be about men. I want to take that first of all, because there are elements to the journey that are relevant to everyone, and it crosses all gender and culture, time and space. And essentially what it says is that life is this progression, and it progresses from not knowing to knowing. I mean, it's what it goes from. It goes from not knowing, and not knowing meaning not knowing yourself, not knowing what to do with yourself, to a journey of self-exploration and self-discovery that eventually has the potential to end in self-actualization and even self-transcendence. That's what the yogis would say. So you can see these universalities across all cultures. Joseph Campbell did a great job of linking them. And I think for us as women to look at our lives like they are this capacity for a very interesting, exciting, magical, transformative journey is a way to wake up every morning with a feeling of like, what's new today, and where am I in my journey, and where's the potential for self-discovery, today. And so I've used that system, and I teach widely about that system. I have some webinars about that on Yoga U. It's called Transforming Your Story. I teach about narrative therapy because it's about a story, right? So you basically, we all start out in a place of not knowing, and then and not even know, and we also don't know that we don't know. That's the other piece. So we start.
Yeah. So we would call that what is that? Unconscious incompetence.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Right. So there's a
totally start out there. And then when you wake up, that awakening time is usually filled with a lot of pain and suffering, because waking up to the fact that you didn't know what you didn't know is so, it's so jolting. It's so jarring for most of us. If you look at every great film that's ever been made, every great story that's ever been told, it follows the same trajectory, essentially, of starting with not knowing, waking up to something, which is usually some kind of tragic event, then kind of experiencing our power, and then defining ourselves so that we can really direct that power, and not just be directed or eaten up by the power, but direct it, and then giving voice to that power. And that the reason this story is so universal, the reason the story is, you see it in everything from Star Wars to Wonder Woman to the Hunger Games, all of the great epic stories. The Bhagavad Gita was the first story that, what I'm telling you right now, the Bhagavad Gita was the first story that this was actually being demonstrated in. All of these stories are the story of the subtle body, because the reason we love these stories so much is because they reflect back to us what's happening inside of us, in our body. And that's why we resonate with them, because we know them to be true in an embodied, instinctive kind of way. So we move from not knowing, which is in the the first chakra, to a place of kind of waking up, which is second chakra. Carl Jung connects that to baptism, to initiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the water chakra. And then we wake up to our power, which is the third chakra. We have this will and this power and this striving potential, but we have to hone it. We have to refine that fire into the refinedness of the heart. You know, you think about like Christ consciousness is the heart, that fire of Jesus, you know, the fire of Krishna, if you like, the fire of the great, you know, the great Saint Teresa, and then from that fire, we take it to the throat, and the throat is where we actualize it, not just speak it, make it come into being. So it's the magic word. It's the Harry Potter chakra. It's like making it happen. So those 5 chakras are really the psychology of making it happen. But, and the potential and the purpose of these 2 is taking that energy, is really the magnetic power of taking that energy and helping it to guide out into that self-actualization and the potential transformation. So that, you know, that hero's journey, we all go through that. We might go through it in a day, and we might go, and we go through it in our lifetime, and we go through it, you know, in these different cycles. And when we can understand that journey, see where we are in that journey, and then start to work with the energy, surf the energy, as opposed to, you know, fight against it or, you know, opt out or whatever, that's when we really start to see miracles manifesting in our life. You know, remember when manifesting spirituality was really popular, like about 10 or 12 years ago? Everybody was like, oh, you just have to think about like getting a good car, getting a nice boyfriend, and it all happens.
The secret.
And the secret, right? All of that stuff. The reason it's not popular anymore, and the reason it's not popular is because it doesn't work. But the reason it doesn't work is because most people try and do it out of their striving self in their belly chakra. They're not doing it out of these higher, authentic parts of themselves. Because when you operate from that really authentic, passionate, and clear part of yourself, then it does manifest. It absolutely manifests, but it has to come from here, not from a lack and wanting. So one of the other models that I like to layer on top of this is a model about narrative therapy and the stories we tell ourselves. Because you have 3 sets of stories you tell yourself. You can tell yourself the story of being a victim. You can tell yourself the story of being a striver and a doer. And you can tell yourself the story of being a conscious creator and a co-creator in your own process. And those 3 stories fit with the second, third, and fourth chakras, essentially. The second chakra is the trauma chakra. I'm a victim. I've been traumatized. I can't do this. I don't have a rich husband. I don't have rich family members. I didn't get that extra degree. I'm just, you know, I have to go get the job at the dollar store, because that's
I don't have the time.
No
one will support me. I mean, all you're doing is proving you're going to manifest that to happen so that you don't feel like you're wrong.
Well, we all have that capacity to tell stories from that place. And that victim place is often a place, it's unexamined, and it's often a place that is speaking from the trauma in our bodies. And to actually unravel the victim, we have to go into our bodies. We have to do, you know, a lot of interoceptive practice. We should be doing asanas. We need to be doing meditation. We need to get out of the cognitive stuff and go into the physical. And then from that victim story, which by the way is perfectly valid. I'm not saying never be a victim. It's perfectly valid. It's just that it's
can't get stuck there.
You know,
you can't get stuck there and then express and then expect.
And if you have these big dreams, big passions, and these big ideas, you have to operate out of a different story. So, you know, the second story we have is the strive, do, and that's third chakra. And that's, I'm going to really work hard. I'm going to get all these things accomplished. I'm going to do this because I have to do it. And sometimes you don't even know why the hell you're doing what you're doing. You're just spinning your wheels. And so we have to be using our energy in a way that's very clear and very focused and very intentional. Because if we're not using it that way, then it's like a gerbil in the wheel. You're just spinning your wheels, and just using up the energy for the sake of using up energy. And our whole culture, in fact, operates out of that story, that striver story. So to get into that co-creative consciousness part of yourself, because this is the chakra where we start to become conscious, we have to operate out of the heart. Now, story, of course, the stories are going to be filtered from this level of awareness, but you know, where we speak from is not just the throat. We speak from all of our body, you know. So if you're just speaking from the victim, and you got the victim, you know, you got the victim energy level, and you get the victim posture, and everything is depressing, and why bother? You know, that's really telling you, when that stuff is coming up, it's telling you you need to embrace and prioritize self-care and do practices that are going to help you to really feel that passion that you once felt. Because if you're feeling passionate about what you're doing, if you have that sense of mission and purpose, that's coming from here. It's coming from, I know who I am, and I know what's sacred, and I know what's important to me. And it's the, you know, it's my heart. It's, and we want to create from that place. So I would never say to stop telling the victim or the striver story, because they're important, and that's where power is. But you have to look at those stories and then choose, consciously choose which part of that story is still valid for you. And when you can get your story to be a conscious co-creating story that you really believe, and you're embodying it and you're living it, that's when things are just gonna start happening, you know, because that's where it needs to come from for other people to connect.
Right. That's what I was going to say. So do you find that then once you have that, you can sort of reflect that out, and you start attracting the people who, again, can see that in your mirror, you know, of it. And then, you know, that's your tribe. That's your community. That's the ones that are going to.
And isn't that what we all want? We want conscious, heartfelt tribe of people. That doesn't mean you're not going to get people with victim stories and striver stories. Of course they're going to be there, but there's part of them where this has opened up, and they're not just solely, you know, hopelessly a victim, I hope, because those people, like, they need interventions, they need mental health care, they need, you know, they need deeper work potentially. And that's the work you're doing. I mean, that's the work my husband does every day. He's a therapist.
Right. And I think that's what ends up happening to a lot of health entrepreneurs that do want to bring in wellness, and understanding it's a different story than what's typically been healthcare, which isn't a lot of health or care. You have to really bring yourself, you know, to how you're going to do that. But that's the biggest shift. I see a lot of people, because I can say when I'm working in a hospital or I'm working in a clinic to some extent, and they're just using their insurance, and so they're just going wherever that piece of paper said. They're not really investigating who they're going to, what they're going to even be doing. Some people even were like, I don't know why I'm here. My doctor sent me. You know, that mentality kind of, you get stuck in that. And yes, it can pay the bills or whatever, but there's so much energy. Again, when we're talking about how can we be doing this in a different way, we're looking to use our attributes and our strengths of grace and flow and ease. That's one way. So while it's a little harder to kind of do the groundwork, prepare the fertile soil, get that all set, once that happens, now you get to really watch the growth, and it keeps giving to you. You know, you just turn that in. And the other module thing we're going to be talking about in this module is Jerry Durham's talking about the customer, you know, the client, the customer cycle, and, like, you know, where you're talking to them. And sometimes you're going to have people who, you know, at a readiness for change level, that is not really where you are working your best. But because they saw a light in you, they're attracted to that. They want it, but they're going to come and you have to kind of know maybe how to give them something to keep them in that community. But maybe, yeah, it's not theirs per se to, you know, maybe they won't be paying that same, they won't take that workshop with you, or that 200-hour commitment yet, because they haven't committed to themselves. But gosh, they might love your blog.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so important. I forget what it's called, the funnels where you get people in through the different levels of products. I think that's so important. But yeah, I mean, everybody has a spark, right? You know, so everybody's got the potential. And I think sometimes the people that have really experienced the most pain and the most suffering and the deepest, you know, dark night of the soul are the ones that do really well with this kind of transformative work, if it helps them to progress through from those really difficult places and to really starting to recognize their power, and then moving into that, the capacity and the self-actualizing potential of the heart. Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I think that we have to, we have to be open to work with who shows up before us. It's one of the things that I've always really felt important to me. It's like, why do people come to me, and what do I have to offer them? And it's not always a perfect fit, but sometimes I've worked with people. I'm thinking this one woman I worked with a few years ago in Charlotte who came to my 200-hour program. She was, I would say she was on the precipice of dissociation most of the time, being dissociated. She had terrible depression, anxiety, lot of trauma. I almost considered not letting her into the program. And actually, I always have a lot of healthcare providers in my program. In my 200-hour trainings, I always have a lot of healthcare providers. So there was a licensed psychologist in that training, and she nailed me to the wall one day and said, "Why did you let this person into your program? You shouldn't have let her in. She needs help. She's a mess, Well, it turns out that this woman, and I, believe me, I had that same question in my mind, but it turns out that this woman completely turned herself around during that training. It was exactly what she needed. She needed a community of women to feel supported in, to look at her trauma. It was the first time she had ever admitted to any living being that she'd been sexually abused since she was 2 years old. And she completely transformed during it, and the psychologist actually ended up dropping out of the program and not liking it. And it was so funny. I was like, okay, whatever, like, you're not going to make everybody happy,
Right, because you put up triggers, that's important to understand. That is such a, like you said, the circle, like it has to be done right. This isn't about just, again, this is the difference between, are you creating in your business or in your services or in your program or your platform, this idea that there's going to be this trusted community, or is it just going to be a place where everybody gets to just play up their fancies and we just sort of codependency sort of facilitate each other, and there's a sale for the fine. That's there's people who are there, and but you have to really kind of, if you're trying to create that safe place, if you're trying to create that community that they know, maybe not now, but they know where to go when they need it, then yeah, sometimes you're going to be playing at that edge of risk, but hopefully you do your self-care that you can say, I'm willing to take this risk, or you have a backup or support system or something. So thank you for that share, because I think we're walking the line, but that's why, again, it's so important to know who you are and have your convictions set, because your biggest work, like that woman right now is walking around like, she's like, how can I get 15 people into Calvary's stuff? Like, how can I get...
She went and became a therapist. She went to social work school and became a therapist, and she's doing great work. And she's just thriving now. It's so heartwarming, and that's not that unusual a story. I've had a lot of people that have gone through, but I also will say that having that group process, and I do it in multiple ways. I have an online community. I create community everywhere I go. Everything I do, creating a supportive community is central to my work. It's central, because without it, people feel like that's what people are missing in their lives, is community. We are so isolated and fractionated as a culture. And when people come and they get a sense of community, it's so incredibly heart opening, and it just helps people grow tremendously. There's a synergy in the group that you don't get when you're trying to do things, autodidactically. So
they will find a way to be part of that community. Like, that's the beauty of it. They will find a way that they want to, they'll be like, oh, well, maybe I can just get an essential oil from you, or maybe I can get a blog post, or, and that's what we want. So thank you so much.
I just want to say, the other thing about the community that's so great is that it takes the onerous burden off of yourself as the person,
like the leader. Yeah.
Because when you're that leader and you're in that position of authority, gosh, everybody wants to project everything onto you, and be like, you're wonderful, you're a goddess, you're all this stuff, and then I hate you and you're horrible and you ruined my life.
Right.
I mean, you have
True.
all of that happening, but when you have that supportive community, the group self-corrects. So the group corrects the issue. So when somebody starts projecting, the group takes care. 9 times out of 10, the group takes care of it. And I don't have to do anything when somebody starts projecting stuff onto me. It's really incredibly supportive as the facilitator too, I would say. So that community stuff, I can't say enough about how important that is in business. And it's just good business nowadays to be there for your community, support your community, you know, have some way that you're showing up regularly, offering free stuff to them. All of that's really important to me.
Right, because all that free stuff is prep. It's marketing.
It's like marketing, but it feels good prep too.
Yeah, like but it's like it's a necessary. It's like, again, going back to that, even if you don't have kids, you just find yourself, I just think like you just sort of find yourself seeing this softer approach to, you know what I mean? And it might be because you get to you're just like, I don't have energy. Like, I think this wonderful thing happens around 40 years old or 35, 40 years old, where you're just like, look, I don't have the energy. So, you know, but before that, you almost have to like allow yourself to feel in, like you said, that embody that, you know, that energy of being guide, because that truly is what a leader is. Otherwise you're a manager. So a leader brings everybody up to them. And then actually sometimes, you know, again, talking Star Wars, Yoda said to, he's like, you know, that's the burden of the master. It's the burden of the master is that their students become what they were not, you know, more than them. And I think, you know,
I think the greatest work you can do is make other people great. It's the greatest work you can do, you know, is offer that, is facilitate that, and watch people soar. I've been leading my teacher training program since 2006. I think I started my program. I've counted more than 20 yoga teacher training programs that have come from people that have gone through my program.
There you go.
I mean,
right.
Amazing. And I'm always like, oh, that's interesting. But they're doing different things, you know, and they're offering it to different people, and those people need something different than what I offer. So, you know, I've trained my competition. There's no doubt about it.
But that's it's a field of abundance, but it's a different mentality because there's just such big work to do. Like that's definitely what you got to get over. And I think that's one of the biggest shifts is abundance mentality, scarcity mentality. That's what we're talking about. Build your community and you will always be given back, more so sometimes than, like you said, what you're putting in there.
I think so.
Thank you, Kristine, so much. Thank you so much for helping out and contributing here. And, you know, definitely reach out to us. You can questions on the forum. If Kristine's not on there for whatever reason, I will get her if it has to be a question for her to answer. And then hopefully we can convince her to make the live Q&A if it works out with her schedule.
I'll try.
For that. We'll see. But thanks so much, Kristine.
Thank you.